How you guys doing? My name is Chris Matthews. I'm your relationship coach and licensed marriage and family therapist. And I'm here today interviewing Miss BEA COTE, licensed clinical social worker, licensed marriage and family therapist. And she is going to share some amazing information pertaining to domestic violence and intimate partner violence prevention. I have attended several presentations that BEA COTE has done. She's a phenomenal influencer when it comes to just shedding light on how domestic violence does not get enough attention when it comes to protecting victims. So I'm going to give her the opportunity to first and foremost introduce herself by telling us a little bit about the work you've done over the course of your career within the field of domestic violence prevention.
Thank you so much for having me here and all those really nice words. Thank you so much. So I am a social worker, a grassroots social worker from many years ago. But for the past 20 plus years, I've worked exclusively in the field of domestic violence, working in an area that a lot of people aren't even aware exists, and that is with the abusers themselves. And so that's what I do. I have a North Carolina state certified program in 5 North Carolina counties. And so we take guys who self-identify as having been abusive to their intimate partners, or they've been ordered by the courts or by DSS. And we work with them in a group program. We have a wonderful curriculum. They have a workbook that they use, and some of them will continue to use that book for decades after finishing the program. And so that's what we do.
And you know, it's fascinating because when you hear about domestic violence, the attention on the abuser when it comes to rehabilitation usually isn't something that's highlighted. And that kind of leads me to the next question. If a person has an abusive past or background, can they change, and can they be in a position at some point to sustain a healthy, intimate relationship in the future?
You're one of the very few people who's asked that question, and I could see your marriage and family therapy hat there. And so the question is, can abusers change and become non-abusive, right? And the brief answer to that is, yes, they can, but victims should never count on it.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Many of the guys change while they're in my program. Some of them skate through and do the bare minimum to finish. We don't have like a graduation. We can't assure anybody that they're doing more than showing up and not acting stupid. Okay? Yeah. And so some of them will make deep changes. Others, the more dangerous ones, are going to use the information they get in the program against their victims. And then in between, we may have some who will never again be physically abusive if they ever were physically abusive. Because, and this is a big one, most domestic violence is not criminal. Most domestic violence is not physical. And so a lot of the guys in my program, as far as I know, have not been physically abusive. They haven't assaulted anybody. So they've been every other kind of abusive. And so, but the guys who have and who've been caught for the first time, the guy, this is his only charge ever. He had no other criminal history. That guy may very well learn how to not get in trouble again.
Wow. You know,
but
I think
he'll increase.
Yeah, I think about how addiction treatment is similar, and you look at a person that's rehabbing from alcohol or drugs. They may never use substances again, but the disease of addiction is ongoing, and they could always relapse. Is there kind of a similarity with that?
Yeah, although domestic violence isn't an addiction, it's kind of the same thing. I sometimes use my weight loss journey as an example, right?
Up and
Okay, so
down,
I could
yeah.
go to Weight Watchers and I could lose 50 pounds. And I'm documenting everything now. You know, we've got the apps that we use, and I'm documenting everything, and I've made the changes in my life, and I'm really excited. I'm really happy. And life starts taking over, and I think I got this. I don't really need to go to meetings, or I stop, you know, documenting in my Fitness Pal or wherever I'm documenting. And eventually, I start putting some weight back on again. It starts sneaking back up on me despite my best intentions. And that's because it's so hard to change a lifetime of behavior, especially if it's rooted in a belief system. And so what we're tasked with is giving these guys the tools, and I say guys because I only work with men, so that's the gender terminology I'm going to use. But we give them the tools, right? And the tools are to look at that belief system, to look at what made them feel entitled to abuse. And that's the key. When people say, why do abusers abuse? It's because they felt entitled to.
So that's a segue once again to the next question. Like, there have to be some signs that one should look at when screening for domestic violence. I work with a lot of partners who are dating or on a newer relationship or have came out of a relationship where domestic violence was present. So how do these individuals screen or identify those signs when using, you know, the term relapse essentially occurs?
Well, sometimes there are no signs, which is really scary, right?
Yeah, it is.
But let's face it, when we first start dating somebody, I tell my guys, when you go out with somebody for the first time, punch them in the face on the first date.
Yeah, I did that. I'm like, what?
That way they'll know what they're in for, and they can make an informed decision about the future of this relationship.
Wow.
The victim can decide right then and there. But that doesn't happen.
No, of
So
course
we don't
not.
go into relationships punching somebody in the face on the first date. We go into relationships putting our best foot forward, putting forth this image, right?
Yeah.
And that image would not work. Let's face it, punching somebody in the face on the first date is not a great dating technique.
So do you suggest that that partner share about their past history? Because if there's a question that comes up and the partner says, so, you know, tell me about your past relationships and what might have led to them to fail, and the partner that was abusive says, well, I was physically abusive, that's what led to the relationship failing.
Yeah, so, okay, here's the, all right, so we want them to be transparent, right?
Sure.
On the other hand, some of these really slick guys can use that to get her sympathy,
Tell
to
us a
get
little
in
bit
good
more.
with her. So I might say to you, Chris, I need to be honest with you. I'm an honest person. I have done things that aren't so great. And one of those things is I pushed my wife one time and I got in trouble and I ended up in a program and I learned to control my anger and to never do that again. So I just wanted you to be aware of that because I'm honest. And I just want you to know that you will never be in any danger from me. Now, that sounds good, right?
It does.
You're going out with me now because that sounded really good.
Yeah, you're being
I
open.
have just portrayed myself as a truthful, honest person who has moved past some negative behaviors. But there were hints in what I just said.
One time.
Anger. If they truly got anything out of their program, they learned it wasn't about anger.
So they were defending the action through the statement.
Right.
So that could be a sign to look for. Not only, so first and foremost, there's a history. They've laid their hands on a woman, right? And I can speak to myself and several men that I know, they've never laid their hands on a woman. Second, justifying or defending the action through anger could be another sign to look for. And third, what I'm hearing just throughout the tone of the dialogue is the manipulation to use the transgression as a vehicle for sympathy. Those are some of the signs that someone could look out for then.
Obfuscation, okay? Obfuscation, it's on the power and control wheel that we use. And if your audience has not heard of the power and control wheel, there are wheels, if you will Google it, there are wheels for every demographic out there, okay? And the one that I use substitutes the original part that says minimization, denial, and blaming with obfuscation, because obfuscation is all about whitewashing. It's about throwing shade on something to make it look different. And so that's what these guys do, just like I just did to you, right? And so those are red flags, but who looks for those?
And to your point, the power and control wheel is a great vehicle or tool to help those out there to prevent falling into that trap of dating or marrying someone that has a history of being domestically violent. And we have a intimate partner violence prevention program through our website, which actually goes through in depth the power and control wheel. And that's a great resource that B's talking about. So once again, you could visit the site to look at purchasing your version or your copy of the Intimate Partner Violence Prevention Program, and you'll get that information. And, this leads into the next question. What do you do when you have that friend or family member, for that fact, that you identify that is dating someone with a suspected history of domestic violence? You might have seen that family member speak about cues or red flags that you just talked about. How do you, as a concerning family member or friend, approach that person? And we think about the Gabby case, the Gabby and Brian case. How would Gabby's friends approach her looking back on some of those symptoms or signs that they might have exhibited that Brian expressed? Like, how do they talk to someone they love? And I'm sure the audience wants to know that too.
Right. Because we do a lot of really good, looking back and trying to figure out how things happen. And there's so many true crime podcasts out there that dig back through that stuff too. There were red flags looking back, and there were things that maybe her family or her friends could have picked up on. But I'm trying to think, dating back to what her father said. She was raised to believe, right, that the man box, what we call him, Tony Porter with a call to men. If you guys have not seen Tony Porter's TED Talk,
great TED Talk,
women,
millions
right?
of views.
Awesome
Yes.
TED Talk.
Yeah.
And so the man box is the definition that men use to define what real manhood is. And so while some of it is great stuff, right? Like the idea of providing and protecting is really great, but nobody tells you how to protect yourself against the person who's supposed to provide and protect you, right? And so what we do is we mistakenly translate provide and protect into strength. And strength is a good quality, right? And so how do we handle when that strength turns on us? At what point does that strength become dangerous or toxic? And keep in mind that I'm not talking about putting his hands on. By the way, I hate that term, because what that does is that there's no definition for putting your hands on. What does that mean?
Because you could actually have good types of physical contact.
Yeah, right. And so, but a lot of my guys, by the way, when they come in to the program, believe themselves to be her victim. And that is because they are hurt. And now they're hurt because they're in trouble.
Yeah, and hurt people hurt other people too.
Right.
Yeah.
They're hurt because she's left, or they're hurt. You know what I'm saying? But they are hurt, and because they are hurt, they must be the victim.
Wow. So they're negating their choices or actions and just focusing on how they felt essentially. And you said something earlier about the strength and protection and things that men provide. And I think about something I heard a while back. Usually our weaknesses are our strengths multiplied by 1,000. So when the strengths are overused, then they can become a weakness.
Right.
And that's what it sounds like you're saying.
Right.
The intent starts out good.
Yeah.
And even one of the signs too, with domestic violence, the person that you're dating originally at the beginning that wants to do everything for you, and they might say, hey, you don't have to work, I'm gonna provide, or hey, you don't have to do anything, I'll take care of you. And at the same time,
Right.
that strength of providing is becoming a tool.
Taking care of you may now
Yeah.
mean I need for you to stay home and not go anywhere.
So it's about control at that point.
It becomes about control at that point, whatever the entitlement is. So that's one thing that you can look for at the beginning, is the control, signs of control, which can look like love, right?
Yeah, that's scary because love and control
Right.
can be parallel. And you mentioned something too. It was a concept you and I have had conversations about. You developed this concept. It's called the Dating Review Committee. So as we conclude the interview, I want you to share a little bit about how you came up with the Dating Review Community and, Dating Review Community.
Date Review Committee.
Date Review Committee. Excuse me, I keep messing up. Date Review Committee, and how you believe that tool can be helpful in the future.
Okay, so many, many years ago on a planet far, far away, when I was a very young social worker, I would go to the beach with a friend of mine. Her nickname was Mike, and there was a lot of drinking involved, and her teenage daughters would bring these boys home back to the beach house, and so we started screening them, and so that developed into a whole thing that we called jokingly the Date Review Committee, but it became a thing in our families and with our closest friends, that we now started to screen potentially serious partners with both of them. And they get to choose their committee, and they choose people who are going to tell them the truth and people that they like and respect, right? And we ask the hard questions that people in love are stupid. Chris, okay?
Yeah,
love,
yeah.
like the first dove of love is stupid, okay? We don't want to ask the questions, the hard questions, because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings or drive them away. And a lot of times we make these huge assumptions about people, right? Mm-hmm. And so we don't know the truth about them. Now we're Googling, right? We're trying to find out if they have an arrest record and all of that. But even if they do, we do the whole, well, that was because she was a bitch. Right? I heard that story. He was very honest about that.
So it sounds like the Dating Review Committee is an opportunity for family members and friends to come together and ask those questions that the person in love may not be aware of. So
those hard, uncomfortable questions.
The hard, uncomfortable questions. And that's a huge help. I know as a parent with 3 children, when my kids begin to bring spouses home, I would love to have an opportunity to ask questions. And we do this now in a non-formal way. It's called meet the parents usually when you bring the boyfriend or girlfriend home. But it sounds like the Dating Review Committee provides a structure.
Exactly. And that gives permission then for, let's say it's your daughter, she's starting to date, she has this boyfriend who's really serious. She knows, and she can tell him, now that we're dating exclusively and we're really serious, I need for you to know that my parents have this thing called Date Review Committee, right? Where they're going to interview both of us together to make sure we have our heads on straight about this relationship. And see, that then gives her permission, right, to tell him, hey, you know, it's not me, you know. And I wanted to say too that the DRCs, which is, you know, that's easier than date review committee, right? DRCs. So the DRC is not just about domestic violence or anything like that. This came about long before I came into this field. But what it's about is asking the questions, right? And getting people thinking and opening that door for conversation.
Yeah. I like it too because it prevents all the backdoor conversation. And a lot of times in families, if a person's dating someone you may not approve of, you're sharing your comments or your concerns with someone else, but the DRC allows for that open line of communication, and it's not just gossip at that point. It's an opportunity to help make sure that someone's protected. Yeah, definitely. And what I would like to do in the comment section is list your information, be with the website, so the viewers can learn more about how to establish their own DRCs and reach out to gain more information associated with the prevention of domestic violence. Are there anything that you would like to share with the audience as we close that, you know, that could be a strong takeaway for them?
Wow. Regarding the domestic violence, I want to speak to that first. I want to make it clear that there is help for abusers and that they can change. But oftentimes they're not going to change for their current victims, and there may be too much damage done in that relationship. But there is help, and the programs like mine, which is called Impact, are called either BIPs, Battering Intervention Programs, or in North Carolina, we're now called Domestic Violence Intervention Programs. Now, and we don't get any funding, unfortunately. I do have a nonprofit called Step Up to Family Safety that helps provide special programs from that, and we, you know, try to reduce domestic violence in the community through education and through providing some limited funding for some of the guys in my program who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford it. Now, as far as the DRCs, Chris, you have motivated me to actually make this a thing that we're going to be able to share with other people. But it is hot off the press. And so I do have a website now, and it is called datereviewcommittee.com.
Nice.
And an email address, datereviewcommittee@gmail.com. Okay. And so we're going to be getting some things going on that. But if you want to reach me, probably the best thing to do is to call or text me. And that number is 980-721-7268.
Awesome. BEA COTE, pleasure to have you. I hope to invite you back for more videos. And we are excited to learn more about in the future the DRC and the growth and development. I know as a parent and a marriage and family therapist, it's going to be a great resource and tool for my clients and even for my own family.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for having me.
me here.
Thank
It's been
you.
a pleasure.
Definitely. Guys, I hope you have enjoyed this interview with BEA COTE and myself. Please subscribe to the channel. And once again, we look forward to seeing you guys on the other side.
You can never go back. I gotta take it on the other side.